Hello again everybody, and welcome back to my workshop for another of Harry's Jeti Clinic videos. And this is a remake of another video from about 4 or 5 years ago, which is the LUA app, which I tend to call autocrow because it was originally developed for use with crow braking. But actually it can be used for trimming elevator or indeed any control in response to another control. What this does is it finds a multi-point mixing curve for you. So for example, when you're opening the crow brakes, your model tends to pitch up and down quite a lot, but it's not a linear thing as you open the brake. So a normal straight line mix from crow brake to elevator would be nowhere near what you need. It would help a little bit, but it could be quite a bit off. Now, alongside this remake, we have an update to the app for you. So it's now version 1.7 is available on Jeti Studio. And the difference is that we've now, at some user suggestions, added a switch to the curve reset. So previously, to reset the curve back to level, you had to go into the app menu and select reset curve. That's still there, but you can now also just move a switch, set the curve back to 0, which is jolly useful in flight. If you think you've made a real mess of it and want to try again, you can just operate the switch, curve reset, or if you just enjoy practicing or want to try various different responses. And this has been a very popular app because it works so well. But if you are used to it, please watch this video to the end because there's very important safety information we have to include. And that is, Jeti says do not use LUA apps to influence your primary flight controls. And there's very good reasons for that. And what are we doing here? We're allowing a LUA app to influence your elevator control. So what you do is you use the app to find the curve, and you can see a curve here on screen, and then you transfer those numbers directly into the elevator trim part of Jeti's butterfly menu, and then you can disable the app. Very important that you do this. And compared to the original video, I've got a slightly better way of doing it. Now, in the years that the app has been published, I've had feedback from people using it, I've watched people using it, and I've seen people not using it in what I think is the best way. They tend to concentrate on listening to the numbers of the point that was being read out. So what we've done is change the default, and instead of the app announcing which point on the curve you've reached as you open the brakes, it's silent. The option is still there for you to switch it on, but I've changed it, or asked Dave to change default to switched off, because in my opinion, you really should not be listening to that. What happened was people would get really fixated on trying to hear for the point and set that point. No, it's so simple to use this. Just watch the model, smoothly open the crow brakes, keep using your elevator to set the model to the attitude you want it to be in, and eventually you find you've got full crow brake open, you've got it to the attitude you want, that's it, perfect. I can do it in one pass now. You might find that you need to go back and do a second fly past, smoothly opening the brake, just to fine-tune it into exactly the way you want it. But say I can get it so well set up on one pass now, but that's what comes from practice. Also, there has been a change to the website address that you need to put in Jeti Studio to get the app compared to the early video. So it's using Dave's modern website address. What's the point of it then? Well, here we have the display up on the screen. Left to right is opening and closing the crow brakes or the butterfly. So at the moment, the crow brakes are closed. And if I move the crow brake control, the marker will move to the right, but the circles on that wiggly line show you the elevator trim that we've found for this particular model. You can see we're getting towards full brake, and there we are. And so that's the elevator trim compensation that's applied to this model. And you can see it's not at all a straight line. And a final little safety note. The app working through trim can at most move the elevator 50% of its travel. And that's partly a safety thing, because you don't want to accidentally hold the elevator stick down and find you've got suddenly full down trim. And I'm not just full down trim, but full down elevator. But for those of you who do have the odd glider that does need even more than 50% travel as the trim, I'll show you at the end how you just add another mixer which can add another 50% or even 100% onto it. And there we go. So first thing we need to do is get the app. So let's go and have a look at the web address and how you put it into Jeti Studio and get the app to your radio.
1. If you have not used any of Dave's apps before, or perhaps you have the old address in Jeti Studio, this is what to do nowadays. First of all, go to the website for Dave's apps, which is jetiluadfm.app. When you're there, there's plenty of description about the apps, each one of them. The first thing I would ask you to do, please, is click on here to contribute to the costs of running the website for Dave. He does have to pay for the website hosting and for doing things like the maps from Google. So please do click on there and make a PayPal donation to the cost of running this that we all benefit from enormously. Now if you come down here, I'll highlight this line here. This is the address you want to put into Jeti Studio. So highlight it, copy it, go to Jeti Studio, go into File, Configuration, and choose the Apps Sources tab. Go to the end of a line and press Return so that you get a new line, and paste in the address you've just copied. Say OK to that. Now, when you connect up a transmitter, we don't need the file manager, and you go to LUA App Manager, you might find that it's rather an empty box where there should be a list of apps. And that's because Jeti has not programmed Studio to catch up with all the variations of processors or whatever systems they have in the different transmitters. And so it doesn't really recognize the transmitter and doesn't think much is compatible. So simply switch off this Show Only Compatible, and suddenly you'll get a full list. A good guide is that every Jeti transmitter with a color screen can run every app. They all have the resources to do it. The two that struggle are the original 14 and 16 with the monochrome screens, as these can only run very small apps, so they can't run the bigger apps, and they could only run at best 2 at a time. And then if we scroll down, we will find the DFM apps, and this is the one you're looking for, DFM Crow. Select that. It should show its version 1.7 there, which is what we're looking for. That's the update. And press the install button if you've never had it before. If you have a lesser version than 1.7, press uninstall. That it uninstalls it, and then install again. Puts the latest version in there. Okay, and it's as simple as that.
Okay, so we've used Studio to put the app onto the transmitter. Now let's add it to the model and get it set up. So we go to Applications, User Applications, press plus, and we come down to DFM Crow. Version 1.7, that's it. Press OK. Let's go back in, and it should now be in the list down here, Adaptive Crow Mixer. Right, Crow control, or whichever control you're wanting to mix from. For instance, if you have fully proportional flaps rather than switched flaps, you might want to use that to your elevator. Maybe you want a throttle to elevator multi-point curve. So here we go. We go into Crow control. I'll move the Crow control, and it comes up like this, which is just a switch. That's not what we want. So you must press proportional to get this screen. Yes? Okay. Say OK to that. Reverse Crow control. Well, I'm going to. I could have reversed P4 as I assigned it. I'm going to reverse it here. And the reason being, that is my Crow control stick at the point where I want no Crow. That's where I want full Crow. But this is going 100%, i.e. fully on to fully off, whereas I want that to be fully on and that fully off. So I could have reversed it here, but I can also reverse it in there. Next, the auto control on-off control. This is going to be a switch, and what this does is switch on and off the app reading your elevator control movement. So you will only have this on whilst you're doing the fly past setting it up. When you switch off this control, the autocrow trimming still works, but it stops reading the elevator stick to adjust the curve. Okay? So I'll go into here, switch my control on. So there we are. That's okay to that. The elevator control, go in here, move it, and like the main Crow control, we need to press proportional to get this. Lovely. Say OK to that. The curve reset control, you don't need to do this, but I say this is the new option we've added in, which allows you to just flatten the curve back to nothing as if you've not set anything while you're in flight, and try again should you want to. So I'll open that. I'll set my switch for that. And if you want to, have a look in Crow settings. Here you can change the number of points on the curve. We've gone for 7. That matches the 7-point curve in Jeti's butterfly menu. So that's the best one to use, but you can use fewer or more points if you want. The curve point spacing linear is, again, we found through a lot of flight testing that was the best one to use, but you can use logarithmic if you want. The rate at which it moves the trim as you hold the elevator can be changed. I suggest you stick with 300. We found all these settings through a lot of trial and error. The autocrow expo, again, is the rate at which it can pick up the stick. Announce unset trim points. That is, when you switch autocrow on to try and read the elevator, as you move the crow stick, what will happen is that when you reach point 1, the transmitter would announce 1. When you reach point 2, it would announce point 2. But it would only do them when you have not moved the elevator. Once you've moved the elevator a little bit to trim that point, it won't announce it again. But I asked Dave to change this to switch off as the default because people got hung up on trying to listen for that instead of just watch the model, fly the model, job done. And here is the menu option. Just press the programming dial there and it will reset the mix curve back to 0. So that's those. So let's say OK. Now how do we get it to work? Well, we need to, first of all, go to Functions Assignment, press plus. We'll have an autocrow, so I'll just call it AC for the moment. You call it whatever you like. And the control for it, press plus, come to user applications, you will see here there is ACV, the adaptive crow value. There we are. Should be proportional, say OK. So that is now the app becoming a control from which we can then mix. So we then go to fine tuning, free mixes, plus from that function we've just made to elevator, or whatever you want, and we'll give it a value of 100%. If you want, you can have a switch for the mixer in addition to the curve reset switch. So if you think you're going to get in a right kerfuffle and you're worried about it, you can just switch the mix off and the app will not be able to influence the elevator at all. I don't need that, so I'm going to say OK, OK to that. And finally, we need to put in the curve itself, because once you've used it, you will need to read the values from it to put into the butterfly menu. So telemetry plus LUA crow mix curve, say OK to that. And there it is. There's the crow mix curve. And if I move my crow control, you can see it moving along the points. But nothing will happen as I move the elevator stick because the autocrow switch is off. Remember, what that does is it reads the points as you move along and then moves them. So how it works, at the 0 point, moving the elevator will have no effect. That point is fixed because your crow brakes are closed. And as you move the stick to open the brakes, that point should move left to right. If it's moving from right to left, you're going the wrong way. The app thinks your stick is actually at fully open crow brake. So that's where you go back into the app and use that reverse crow control switch, or go back into the assigning the control itself and reverse that. So that's point 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Notice that as we move, the little square shows where we are. The app will pick the nearest point. So there, at that stage, it's still using the 0 point. Moving the elevator here will do nothing because the app is still picking the closed point. But once we get to here, it picks the nearest point. And as we keep opening the control, it keeps picking the next nearest point. You can see it jumping along. Now, let's switch on the autocrow. I'll turn the volume up a bit.
Autocrow. Autocrow.
Now, you cannot switch that warning off. It is built into the app, and it's very important because once this is active, and if your crow is partly open, any movement of the elevator stick will retrim the elevator at that point of the crow. You switch it off, the warning stops. So it warns you then, once you've done your setup fly past, switch the thing off, because you don't want, if you have a bit of crow open whilst you start into a turn or whatever, it's going to retrim the elevator. So we line up the model with a good bit of height because we're going to be opening the crow brakes, and we switch on autocrow. I'll turn the volume down. And we start smoothly and slowly, but not too slowly, opening the crow brakes. And we use the elevator, just watch the model, fly the model. So you don't look at the screen, you don't need to listen to anything, she's just warning you, switch me off. And we start smoothly opening, and we find we need a little bit of elevator. Now notice something that's happened straight away here. I'll switch her off. Once you set a point, all the subsequent points will follow it, because there's a fair chance it's going to be up or down a little from that, rather than all the way back to 0. And if you were having to set a point a large way away, You don't want to then have the trim jump back to neutral at the next point. Okay, so we smoothly open and we just keep using the elevator as we need to hold the model in the attitude that we want. There we are. That's how quickly you can build up a curve. You switch it off. And now I'm going to move the elevator. See, even though the crow brake is open, we're on the end point, it no longer adjusts it. But we have kept the curve. So the autocrow on or off just tells you that it's going to adjust the curve while you move the elevator. Switch it off, it will stop adjusting it. And you can go back, fly another fly past, and happily do it again. You find that one, it was diving a little bit too much. I'll pull a bit more up elevator, and you keep moving it and tweaking it as you require to get it just set in. As I say, with practice, you can do it in one fly past. And the great thing is, once you've done it, you come into land, you operate the crow brake, and the model, in many cases, will be like it's on a gyro on the elevator. It just goes in a straight line at the attitude that you set it at, even as you open and close them a bit. It's really beautiful. And I will now operate the switch to reset the curve. You'll see a message comes up on screen, curve reset. But you should not be looking at the screen while you're flying. So what I did was I used the text-to-speech at rc-thoughts.com, and I made a little text speech file. So if I come in here, I can add try and remember what it was. I think it was autocrow reset. Maybe it was crow reset. There we are, crow curve reset. I only made it a few hours ago and I've already forgotten. So now when I do it,
Crow curve reset.
There we are. Say okay to that. So
Crow curve reset.
So once again, line up in the direction you want to, get the model settled in trim,
Autocrow.
switch on the autocrow, smoothly move the crow, trim it with the elevator as required.
Autocrow. Autocrow. Autocrow.
Switch it off, go around, gain some height, try another fly past, switch autocrow back on, and smoothly open the crow brakes, a little bit slower than I did there perhaps, and just adjust the elevator to fine tweak anything. What I find works is that you can open the brakes at a reasonable speed because you don't need much trimming, but if you suddenly find the models ballooning upwards or diving downwards, just stop moving the crow brake any further open. Use your elevator stick to adjust the attitude of the model to get what you want. When it's there, start moving again. And that way you can do it quite quickly. Please note that if you have auto trim on, but you have left the reset switch on from the last time, crow will still work, but when you switch it off, it will bang reset and flatten the curve. So when you use the reset switch, please do reset it and switch it off again straight away. Now, what do we do next? Well, we need to get this curve into Jeti's own software. And so what we do there is we just read the numbers. So we're at 0. You read the number here, 14. 14 there is the value of that point. 11.1 is the value on the curve at that exact location that the little square is at. Yeah? So as you can see, that value moves smoothly, and we get to the next point, 47, 50, 69, 38, and 69. Okie doke. Also, before we do anything, have a look in servo monitor and test. So we can see that's down elevator, and that was generally the direction I was moving it in. So let's try moving the crow braking, and look, the trim is coming in and moving as per the curve. Now, switch on the model. Please do test this thoroughly on the ground. Use big trim movements. Because a friend of mine somehow, and I'd never worked out how, managed to have it reversed so that as he pushed in down elevator, it trimmed up elevator. And to this day, I have no idea how he managed to do that, but he hadn't tested it on the ground first. So the first he knew about it was in the air when the model started behaving worse and worse and worse. So please, whenever you're doing anything like this, test it thoroughly on the ground, on the model, not just in servo monitor. Make sure things are happening and going the right way. Okay, so we've got our values. We come to, where are we going? Butterfly, flaps. We're just after the elevator adjustment. S1. Now we're going to set this to 50%. Why? Because, remember, trims are only half the value of a control. And I mentioned that the app, even when it's at 100 on the curve, it can only affect at most half of your elevator travel. Partly as a safety feature, partly to stop the thing being too coarse in its application, partly because most people simply won't need more than that. A few will, and we'll show you how. So now I can come down and change it to a 7-point curve, come into them, and I simply feed in the values. So that point there was 14. Turn the volume down a little bit for you. On to the next point, which was 47. Next point was 50. 69. 38. Really? Yep, okie doke. And 69. And there we have it. That is the curve put in. It'll only run at 50%. Say OK to that. But we must now remove the influence of the app, because at the moment the app through the mixer is applying that curve, and we've just told butterfly menu to apply the curve as well, so things would double up. And for safety reasons, we want the app to no longer have any influence over the model. And the obvious one to do that is simply X out the mixer, delete it, yes. And to be really tidy, you can, of course, as well, remove the function and you can remove the display as well, because you won't need that anymore. And you can remove the app if you wish to. You can leave it there running. It's not going to be doing anything anymore. But obviously I'd want to switch off the curve reset audio voice out so that that doesn't talk to me anymore. If we remove the adaptive crow mixer, then we won't get the autocrow warning as well. So we can take that out. We'll delete yes. Now let's go in and have a look at the servo monitor. There's our elevator, and there we go. There we are. It should finish on 69%. Half of that is 34.5, so it's gone to 35%. Yes, so that's correct. Now, one little tweak you can do is to increase the effect that the app has on the trim. the app is limited to 50% of the elevator travel would be taken up by trim. But a couple of people mentioned to me they have a model which is quite extreme and it needs a bit more trim than that. In fact, it used quite a lot of the elevator travel. So if you desperately need to do that, we just add another mixer. So if we first of all have a look at the travel available, I'll open the Crow, watch the elevator, peaks at 35%. Say OK to that. So if we go to our free mixes, we just copy that one, but I would very, very strongly suggest you do not leave it at 100%. Change that down to something like 50%. So cumulatively, the mixers are 150%, but it's trim, so that's 75% of the available elevator travel is now being used. Say OK to that. We'll have a look again at the servo travel. It was 35. It's now 52% for the curve that it's using. OK. And when you go to the butterfly flap menu and you set your elevator curve, I set the value in there, instead of being 50%, take that to 75%, and then you'll get the multiplication required. Okay.